Good afternoon, folks. It is the afternoon of the 9th of November, 2021. The other day I made perhaps my most important vlog on Groupthink Explained, Understanding the Collective. There I dealt with the what and what groupthink looks like, but I didn't get into the how, why, when, and where of it in particular. So as an addendum to that video, I'm doing today's video on the how, what, when, or the how, why, when, and where that groupthink will emerge. Groupthink and brainwashing, of course, are associated. I was thinking this morning as I was driving on a Siri to work, we bought this house in 2017, and now it's worth almost twice, yes, twice almost, what we paid for it. If we were to sell this house today and try to buy it back from ourselves at the price we sold it for, we could not be able to afford to purchase this house. Our government, not just our government, but all throughout the Western world, are printing money, devaluing our savings, because all the things that people have put away to save with that aren't in physical assets, but are in banks, are being devalued, and whoever is behind this fiasco is literally stealing our money. If this doesn't concern you, it should. And the fact that so few are saying anything about it is equally disturbing. And the fact that fewer still are doing anything about it is even more concerning. And the fact that so few who are doing something about it actually understand the problem is deeply, deeply troubling. I have virtually cut myself off from everyone I know because what I have to say has become so unappealing that no one wishes to listen to it. Or very, very few. And the few that do almost never engage me in a debate around the things that I am discussing in my vlogs. Nevertheless, I don't ask anybody to believe me. Everything that I state, I can substantiate. Of course, I'm not a prophet, and I don't claim to be right. But what I am stating is undeniably what is happening. And if we're not able to discuss it rationally, in the cold light of day, to actually examine what this phenomenon is, because again, we are witnessing it globally. It's not just here in Canada that our government is printing money. It is literally all throughout the Western world. There is a scheme to undo modern Western liberal democracy and constitutional limits on government. So I'm going to read two articles, short blurbs from two articles. The first from thelearningmind.com, Brainwashing Science. Again, I'm just reading the article. Brainwashing is the theory that a person's core beliefs, ideas, affiliations, and values can be replaced, so much so that they have no autonomy over themselves and cannot think critically or independently. Who is likely to be brainwashed? In the book and film entitled The Manchurian Candidate, a successful senator is captured by Korean soldiers during the war and brainwashed into becoming a sleeper agent for them, with the intent of assassinating the presidential candidate. The film shows that even an intelligent and powerful man can be brainwashed, but in truth, the opposite is more likely. It is generally people that are vulnerable in some way and are therefore susceptible to a different way of thinking that are more likely to become brainwashed. This could include people that have lost their loved ones through divorce or death, been made redundant or sacked from their job, been forced to live on the streets, especially young people, are suffering from an illness they cannot accept. How can you be brainwashed? The person who is trying to brainwash you will want to know everything about you in order to manipulate your beliefs. They will want to find out what your strengths are, your weaknesses, who you trust, who is important to you, and then isolate, attack your self-esteem, create an us versus them mentality, and instill blind obedience. So, it is not, as I stated in my first video, that a person under the influence of this wants to know you, because people under the influence of groupthink do not wish to know you as an individual unless you're part of the group. It's that those who are in charge of the manipulation, who now have access to all our data, are using metadata, okay, to know everything you do. Know every time you've gone out to eat, know what you're buying, know where you've been. We are constantly being tracked and monitored. There is no such thing as privacy in this postmodern world. After installing blind obedience, then they test to make sure that what they have done to you is effective. So with isolation, the first step towards brainwashing begins with isolation, because having friends and family around you is dangerous to the ones controlling this manipulation. That's why in COVID, the first thing they did was separate you from family and friends. This should raise alarm bells in any thinking person or any feeling person. The last thing a brainwasher wants is someone with a different opinion to theirs, questioning what you're now being asked to believe. Notice a constant barrage of COVID-19 84, vaccinations, COVID, inflation, COVID-19 84, new pill, COVID, take your Pfizer, Fissy Pfizer, double vax. It's you could turn on the news over this last year and a half and hear a constant stream of the same thing, because the topics of news are remaining consistent. This is deliberate. The isolation is going to start in the form of not allowing you access to family or friends, or occasionally checking where someone is and who they are with. But I went to the restaurant last night and the other day. You have to sign in. They know who you're with. They know everybody in the restaurant. We're being totally controlled. Attacks on self-esteem. A person who wants to brainwash another can only do so if their victim is in a vulnerable state and has low self-confidence. People who know themselves, this is why I keep stating, knowing yourself is the most fundamentally important thing you can do. And I hear a lot of Christians who claim to have the new birth saying, all you need to do is know God. Well, I have a revelation for you. You can't know God unless you know yourself, because the prerequisite of getting to God is understanding your sinful nature, understanding your shadow, as Carl Jung would put it. If you don't know yourself, if you don't understand your own weaknesses and flaws, if you don't understand the nature of your own thinking, then you'll not be able to withstand this attack. A broken person is much easier to rebuild with a brainwasher's beliefs. The brainwasher, therefore, needs to break down the victim's self-esteem. This could be through sleep deprivation, verbal or physical abuse, embarrassment, or intimidation. So obviously our government is using verbal abuse, embarrassment, and intimidation. A brainwasher will start to control everything about the victim's life, from food, the time they sleep, to even using the bathroom. So right now, we're seeing the state starting to question even the food that we choose to eat. And we're told that meat should have a new tax put on it because meat is destroying the planet. We grew this enormous noggin because we started eating fat and meat. The government is trying to undo civil society, and this is the method they're using. They create an us versus them mentality. I'm an old man, I'm 68, will be 69 in April. I have never seen Canada so divided. I've never seen people so aware of their political affiliations. Well, I myself have none. I'm a classical liberal, and I believe in absolute small government. And there isn't a political party in power that represents what I would believe to be responsible constitutional government. But what I do see is an us versus them mentality, where people literally can no longer communicate or no longer are willing to communicate because they can't hear what one another is saying. In order to break down a person and reshape them in a different image, an alternative way of living must be introduced that is far more attractive than their present one. This is usually achieved by the victim only mixing with other people who have been brainwashed and will therefore praise the new regime. Or it could be that everyone wears a kind of uniform, have a set diet, or other rigid rules that encourage a group dynamic. There is evidence to suggest that humans are by nature tribal and want to be part of a group. The brainwasher needs to convince their victim that they lead the elite group and that everybody wants to be in it. Oh, God. Yeah, Justin, you got that one right. Everybody wants to be Mr. Socks. Blind obedience. The end goal is for the brainwasher is blind obedience, where the victim follows orders without question. I believe this is why they have deliberately released contradictory information in terms of how we're to mitigate the CCP virus, otherwise known as COVID-1984. Our bureaucrats in charge of healthcare have constantly contradicted themselves and changed the rules around COVID-19. Everybody is noticing this, and the ones that don't care are the ones that are under the influence of this brainwashing. This is usually achieved by positively rewarding the person, as now that we can go out and be with one another because we have our, as they would say in Nazi Germany, our Gesundheitspass that I carry in my wallet. This is usually achieved by positively rewarding the person when they please the brainwasher and negatively punish them when they do not. So now, if you don't have your Gesundheitspass, you can't go into a restaurant. Chanting a phrase over and over again is also a good way of controlling a person. You can read this all for yourself and just go through the highlights. Testing. A brainwasher can never think that his or her work is done. There are always scenarios where the victim could start to regain their autonomy. Remember, regain their autonomy is key. Why anybody would relinquish autonomy over themselves is beyond me. I have already gone too far, okay? I have two of the mRNA protocols in me because my wife it was demanded that she be inoculated with this spike protein, and therefore I would not allow her to be inoculated if I were not inoculated as well. But I have since been in a constant brain fog. These people do not have your best intentions at heart. Anyone who does will want you to be a self-actualized, autonomous being, thinking for yourself. They do not want you to think for yourself. They think you've had too much to think. So they test the victim. So this is how you can prevent from being brainwashed. Don't believe all you read. Turn off that boob tube if you're listening to mainstream media. And start subscribing to media that is actually telling you the truth, particularly regard to the truth of what is going on in Wuhan, in China, with the CCP, and Pfizer's relationship with Wuhan, where the virus emerged. Why is it that the firm that has repeatedly paid reparations in the millions and millions of dollars for bribing doctors, why is it that they had the antidote developed in the very place where the virus came from? If that doesn't cause you to question the current scenario, they even have a Toastmasters, as I shared the other week, in Wuhan. Don't believe all you read. Don't believe the hype. Don't buy into fear and scare tactics. Constant climate alarmism, COVID, danger, COVID. Put an app on your phone so you know if you've been in contact with a human being that could kill you. They want to convince you that our fellow man is deadly. I'll tell you what's deadly. Those in charge of this fiasco. Watch for someone's agenda. Look at their agenda. They wish to control everything. This is all about power on the part of the people who are doing this. They want absolute control, which is why Trudeau stated point blank that he admires, openly admires, China's basic dictatorship. Look out for subliminal messages. They're all along the highway. Stay home. Be inoculated. Be in terror. Be in terror. Now they've disappeared. But I guarantee you there's another wave coming. And we're going to see worse yet to come. Follow your own path. Yes, dare to be yourself. There's an idea. Listen to your intuition. If your gut is telling you something is wrong, something is wrong. Don't follow the crowd. And don't be afraid to be different. I'm a freak. I'm freaky. I am a freakazoid. I have been freakazoidal all my life. Why? Because I ain't got no choice. I'm just an oddball and always have been. But one thing, my oddity has served me well, is in regard to never wanting to be a part of groupthink. So what is groupthink? I defined what its effects were. Let's look at its negative effects in terms of how it causes the group to make inane decisions. Groupthink is a phenomenon that occurs when a group of well-intentioned people makes irrational or non-optimal decisions spurred by the urge to conform or the belief that dissent is impossible. So it's either out of a desire to conform, or even if you don't want to, believing that you have no choice, like I idiotically did by receiving the vaccine, which isn't a vaccine. Okay, it's a spike protein. It's a genetic protocol, and it's experimental. The problematic or premature consensus that is characteristic of groupthink may be fueled by a particular agenda. Remember that it is fueled by a particular agenda. Or it may be due to group members valuing harmony and coherence above critical thought. But whatever it is, it eschews critical thought. Critical thought cannot occur in groupthink. The term groupthink was first introduced in the November 71 issue of Psychology Today. And what I'm reading you right now is out of Psychology Today. I'm posting links to both the articles below this vlog so that you can read them for yourself. Do not believe me. Read these articles for yourself. It was developed by psychologist Irving Janis. Janis had conducted extensive research on groupthink decision-making under conditions of stress. Since then, Janis and other researchers have found that in a situation that can be characterized as groupthink, individuals tend to refrain from expressing doubts and judgments or disagreeing with the consensus. In the interest of making a decision that furthers their group cause, members may also ignore ethical or moral consequences. Please tell me if you believe it's ethical that our government simply print money and devalue savings that you sweated blood to put in the bank for your future and your children's future. Please tell me if you think that's ethical. Because what they're doing is stealing your money. In the interest of making a decision that furthers their group cause, members may ignore ethical and moral consequences, while it's often invoked at the levels of geopolitics or within business organizations, and now we're at the geopolitical level because it's happening worldwide. Groupthink can also refer to subtler processes of social or ideological conformity. Critical theory is everywhere. All you have to do is read what the sociologists from the Frankfurt School wrote, the many who developed critical theory. Critical race theory is being taught in all our schools. We're supposed to be ashamed for immutable traits or award people special status based on their immutable traits. We're supposed to divide humanity based upon people's immutable traits. It is the diametric opposite of English common law, where Lady Justice has a blindfold and all are equal before the law. This is not equality. This is creating a new form of racism. Subtler process of social or ideological conformity, such as participating in bullying or rationalizing a poor decision. So that's what you do. If you're not part of this woke culture, you'll be bullied. You'll be pillared, vilified. You'll be called everything but what you actually are, a thinking person. How to recognize groupthink. It's useful to identify the situation in which it's most likely to occur. When a group feels threatened, either physically or through threats to their identity. This may develop a strong us versus them mentality. And for that reason, I'm encouraged. Because if the radical collectivist left, replete with their groupthink, did not feel threatened, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today. Obviously, we pose, people like myself, who can think for themselves, pose an inherent, extrinsic threat to them. And I assure you of this, I am. I will see their ideology disappear because it is a mind pathogen. And it is destroying our universities, it's destroying our public schools, our high schools, our universities. It's destroying our government. We don't have statesmen. We have ideologues, people that have an agenda that has nothing to do with serving their constituents. Develop an us versus them mentality. This can prompt members to accept group perspectives, even when those perspectives don't necessarily align with their personal views. So that's something you need to ask yourself. Are you be asked to believe in things that you yourself wouldn't believe in? Like, I don't know, men and women are the same thing? That there's no inherent difference between men and women? Or that binary sex isn't a fact? Groupthink also occurs in a situation where decision making is rushed, in some cases with very destructive outcomes. To minimize the risk, it is critical to allow enough time for issues to be fully discussed. And there is no debate today. I have invited people to debate with me based on what I'm sharing here. And do you think that I can engage anyone in perhaps the most important discussion that faces the Western world today? Because it's happening all throughout the former liberal democratic West. Limited constitutional government and rational thought are dying. All the values, the liberal values of the age of enlightenment are dying under our own knives. There is no perspective anymore. There is no ability to have rational discourse. You have to be too afraid of offending people. I can assure you this, I'm not afraid of being offended or of giving offense. I don't care a fig for either. I invite you to offend me. In fact, at least then, if you can use ethics and epistemology to offend me and facts, I will admire you. Individual members of groupthink self-censor. This is what I encountered in Norway. The government didn't need to censor Norwegians. They do it to themselves. Oh, you mustn't think that. Oh, you mustn't think. Oh, my wife posted the other day about the inherent threat that communist China is posing to global order and with its quest for hegemony and control. Oh, you mustn't be hard on the communist Chinese. Mustn't be hard on the communist Chinese. The nation that, with our cooperation, mind you, just released a bioweapon to attack the whole world. And is rattling swords against Taiwan and Hong Kong. You can't make this shit up. That these people are so utterly brainwashed that they're incapable of rational reference. Of course, my wife was able to silence her by asking a few simple questions to which this person had no answer. Of course, because under scrutiny, these people's arguments can't hold up because they don't have an argument. They don't have rational discourse at their disposal. But the frightening thing is that the people that are under this influence, they don't care about rational discourse. Groups that actively deride outsiders may be more likely to fall prey. What is the best way to avoid groupthink? Since groupthink can occur because groups fear disagreeing with the leader, it can be beneficial for the leader to temporarily step back. The probability of Justin Trudeau or any of the other oligarchs in charge of countries that are doing this, like Biden, voluntarily stepping back is less than nil, because the only thing they want is power over you.